Hey guys, it's Evan here. I decided to do a little tutorial on the LFO section of the Digitone. I thought it might be useful for people, and I got a lot of nice comments on my last tutorial encouraging me to do more, so I'm here doing more, and thanks for that, guys. So an LFO, low frequency oscillator, is a tool for modulation in synthesis with synthesizers. So a good way to explain it is if you think about an orchestra and the first violin, first chair violinist plays an A pitch so that the orchestra can tune to it. That A is at 440 hertz, meaning that wave, that change in air pressure, is happening 440 times. It does a complete cycle 440 times per second. And so a low frequency oscillator, just imagine that wave cycle slowed way down to starting just below 20 hertz. So instead of 440 times a second, it's 20 times a second. When you talk about a cycle on the LFO, it is from any crest to crest or any trough to trough. So the troughs are the low points and the crests are the high points. So from one to the next consecutive high point or low point is a cycle. And so let's jump into the LFO page and see what it can do. So it starts with, so each track on the Digitone has 2 LFOs dedicated to it, which is really great, and plenty of destinations where they can be set to modulate. So if you look at the first page by clicking LFO here, you've got the top is the first LFO and the bottom is the second LFO, and then you can click this button again and it brings you even deeper into the menu where this first row corresponds to the first LFO and then this second row again corresponds to the second LFO. So our first little square here is the destination. And so all of these parameters here can be modulated by the LFO. And basically the pages that you're sort of allowed to modulate in terms of here, these pages I mean is synth 1, synth 2, filter, and amp. And then you can also modulate the first LFO with the second LFO, which I'll show you. So let's go through. So I've got this set to amp volume now. I've got my wave set to triangle, but there's others. You can do a sine wave, you can do a square wave, you can do a saw wave, exponential, a ramp, and random. So all of them have varying uses, and you can kind of experiment and use your ears to figure out what you want. So right now, I've got the depth down to 0, so we're not hearing any of the modulation, but let's turn it up. Turn up the speed. So now amp volume is being modulated by this LFO. And so we've got, so this is the sine, let's try the square. So it's more of an on-off switch, you can think of it that way, than a gradual. And it's all just about effect and what you want and what you're going for. So let's increase the speed a bit. Go to the second page. So real quick, I forgot to talk about the depth before I move on to the next page, so I'm doing that later, as in now, for you. So depth refers to how much of the output signal from the LFO is being sent to the target parameter. So right now we've got amp volume as our target parameter. So if I turn the depth up all the way, we're going to hear really a big difference in the volume change in the amp volume. If I bring the depth down, that difference won't be as great. And so that's the depth control, except there's a thing called polarity. So if I go this way, if I go counterclockwise, now where once we had crests, we have troughs, and where we had troughs, we have crests. So the wave's flipped on the x-axis, if you want to think about it that way. So that means that basically our rhythm is going to change in this situation. So let's play from here. Now if I play on the other side, now it's kind of on the upbeats, syncopated. So that's polarity there, and depth. Here you have various parameters. Here's the BPM multiplier. So basically this will multiply whatever your speed is on the first page, basically doubling the speed. And so that helps you get really fast LFO speeds. And then you've got and I'll go more into the mult and the speed parameter and how they relate to each other, because it's a bit complicated. If you want to understand it, if you just want to use your ears, it's not as complicated, but if you kind of want to understand it a bit more, it is. So I'll do that in a second. Fade is just a fade in, so the LFO output effect will fade in and then it'll fade out. And depending how you have your sound, you may or may not hear this fade in or fade out. There I'm hearing it, right? As opposed to... Was I hearing it? Yeah, a little bit, I think. That's hard to hear sometimes. Depends, it can be really dramatic if you have the correct setting. Phase refers to when in the wave your the LFO will kick in, when in the cycle. So you can kick it to the middle of the cycle, you could kick it to the end, and then of course you can have it at the beginning. And so mode is an interesting one. When I first got the Digitone, I sort of just kind of ignored the meanings of these various mode parameters, but they're actually really important if you want to get the full experience here. So the first mode is free, and so let's change the let's change this to a sine wave. So free mode means that the LFO is constantly going in the background on the Digitone, and when I press a key, or when there's a trig programmed in, we're just kind of going to catch the wave wherever we happen to be while it's running. So that means practically that, say you've got multiple trigs going and you've got the LFO set, it's not going to be completely predictable where on the LFO those trigs will hit, because you're on this free wheeling sort of wave. Now if you change it to trig mode, that means it's always going to start at the same place. So the LFO is going to be re-triggered every time there's a trigger. So it'll always sound the same on the actual trigger. And then if I go to free, so again, it's kind of subtle, but it can be also not so subtle depending on how you have the other parameters set up. So past trig mode is hold, which almost turns this not so much into an LFO. I mean, you're using the LFO to modulate. So how this works is whatever the output of the LFO signal was at any given moment that a trig occurs, it'll basically freeze right there and give you that modulation, but it'll keep it constant. So you can kind of think of it like you're at the beach and your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, takes a picture of you on a wave, and you're gonna, in the pictures, you're gonna be at different places on the wave, and you're just kind of frozen in time there. So that's how this works. So if I hit this trig repeatedly, we will hear different amp volumes because I have it set at amp volume. So let's try it. Let's make sure the depth is up so we can hear it clearly. And these are not velocity sensitive, so you know that that is the LFO that's doing that. And then you've got one. One is like there's just one wave that you go through, so it sort of becomes an envelope. And then half is just half a wave. Half, oops. As you can hear, so it kind of turns these LFOs into extra envelopes that you have, which is really nice. Okay, so the relationship between the multiplier and the speed is pretty interesting. If we set our speed at 1 and our multiplier at 1, so it's multiplying by 1, not doing anything, then basically we know what 1 unit of speed equals, and 1 unit of speed equals 128 measures, so 128 whole notes if you're in 4/4. If you were in, well, it doesn't matter if you were in 2/4, it'd be double, but who cares? Anyway, so basically, right now at this incredibly without the multiplier kind of being up there and it only being at 1, you've got basically these right now. This speed parameter is making very broad modulations that over long periods of time. So like I said, 1 would be 128, and if we set the speed to 2, it'd be 64, and 4 would be 32, 8 would be 16, 16 would be 8, 32 would be 4, and all the way to 64 would be 2 bars. So that's 128 bars, 64 bars, 32 bars, 16 bars, going up to 2. And so even at the very highest speed, it's quite slow. So that's why you need this multiplier to turn things up a bit and give us some faster durations that we can use. So let's, I'm just gonna play it. And if you hold function, you can go to, if you hold function while you turn the encoder, you can go to even divisions of the beat. Like that. So let's listen to this little trig I put in. And so using the multiplier and the speed together you can make long changes over vast amounts of time or short little changes. So I hope I explained that decently well for you. So now I'm going to show you 2 patterns I created with where I basically used LFOs to kind of make them more interesting and to spice them up a bit. So I've got the first pattern is this sort of techno jam. Let me turn on the analog heat here. Hopefully this doesn't come in too loud. And I believe it's 1 that I have it off. Yeah, so this is with the LFO modulation, and here's the pattern without. Right now, starting now. So it's pretty subtle, but the bass line is a lot more boring because you don't have those that kind of shadow melody that was created with the LFO, bringing out distortion at certain points. So we can go back to that. cool syncopation effect. Really brings it to life. We can listen to the track separately. Let me start this over. So I've got all of the percussion on this pattern. I've got the reverb decay set pretty high, and so it's creating this kind of ambience, and those are the hats are being sent there. So let's listen to this track on pattern 2. It's just not as lively. And we can see what we've got. Synth pitch. Alright, so let's go over here. So we've got, let's see what we're modulating on to. A filter envelope set on random, and synth the level of ratio A, I believe. The depth set all the way and the speed pretty low. Kind of creates a cool gyrating effect. And then let's hear what's going on. I don't think that popped up in the I don't think you've heard that yet. And here, just sort of this drone going. Not much happening on here. Let's go to its LFO. Yeah, nothing actually. Okay. So now we change in for now. Waiting for the fun little electric piano part to come in. It's on track 3. Can look in at it. I believe it's on track 3. Yeah, that's it. That sound. So I've got this trig, I believe, set to 19% probability, and then these are set to go off only if this trig goes off. Let's just jam for a second until we hear that. Just because I like it. There it is. So anyway, so that's that pattern, and then I have a second pattern I put together where the hi-hats are sort of the main event on this guy. Make sure it's not too loud. Totally different vibe, utterly and completely. So here's without the LFOs. So the hi-hat is certainly way more boring, and the pad is a little different. I can show you. So back to the LFO modulated version. A bit groovier, would you say? So let's listen to just the hi-hats. Should be a little more modulation then. There we go. It's like the LFO fell off. Trying to hear for the modulation on this guy. Yeah, so if you want to hear the difference, here's that track without modulation. So it's kind of missing that sort of delayed effect. It's not a delay though, it's, forget what, let's look. Synth feedback. At the end. So yeah, that's everything with LFOs. I think I wanted to cover. I want to thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe if this was helpful for you. I think LFOs are an amazing tool for electronic musicians, and I think no matter what genre you're in, they have a place, and there's so many ways people get creative with them, and exploring what they can do is a joy, really. I mean, you can generate so much music without thinking, basically. I mean, just kind of playing with the parameters on the pages and seeing how, basically what comes out the other end, because you can't really predict it. So that's sort of the fun, just using your ear and messing with the parameters. But I did want today to sort of explain, in case you do want to, use them in a predictable way, so you can understand a little bit more about them. Anyway, thank you so much. Please like and subscribe, and comment if I missed something, or if you have a question, or if you just like what I did. Thanks so much. Bye.